Please take your seats. The meeting is about to begin. Remember to speak into the microphone, as this meeting is being recorded for public record. Please stand by. We are going on air in 5, 4,
that did not
3,
make
2,
any sense at all.
1.
That was not a funny joke. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is April 1st. I hope no April Fool's jokes from Commissioner, any lame Commissioner jokes from Commissioner Magazine. I am joined by Commissioner Magazine and Commissioner Bott at today's Land Use and Sustainability Committee. Before we proceed, does the City Attorney have any notices to make?
Sure, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Today's meeting of the Land Use and Sustainability Committee will be conducted in a hybrid format, with the committee physically present in the commission chambers at Miami Beach City Hall, and applicant staff and members of the public appearing either in person or virtually via Zoom. To participate virtually, the public can dial 1-888-475-4499 and enter the webinar ID, which is 8505-9923-037#, or log into the Zoom app and enter the webinar ID, which again is 8505-9923-037. Anyone wishing to speak on an item must click the raise hand icon in the Zoom app or dial *9 if you are participating by phone.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Tom, Mr. Planning Director, are there any changes to today's agenda?
Just three, Mr. Chair. First, item number 8, which is the North Beach Water Quality Parkview Canal Report, is being deferred to a future date. Item number 9.
Just curious, Tom, is that report ready?
That I don't know. The departments that were handling it, because the sponsor deferred it, they didn't prepare anything for this meeting, so.
Yeah, Commissioner Fernandez is not here, but I would like to hear that report probably at the next meeting.
Item number 9 is monthly updates on historic hotel redevelopment on Collins Avenue between 14th and 20th Street. This is also being deferred to a future date. And then finally, the item regarding dedicated bus lanes on Washington Avenue is being deferred to a future date.
Thank you. Is there a motion to set the agenda?
I'll make a motion.
As amended?
Yep.
Okay, I'll second that. Tom, can you please read into the record item number 2?
Okay. Item number 2 is review existing fencing requirements in the land development regulations for vacant and abandoned properties, as well as construction sites, and consider amendments to streamline the existing requirements for applicants and property owners. This was a dual referral to the Planning Board.
Commissioner Magazine, this is your item.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner Suarez. Tom, and hopefully you can give me a little guidance here. My initial thought for this was in preparation for the World Cup of wanting the city to look as amazing as possible. And I understand that there's some sites that just won't be fully activated, but I thought, wow, maybe we could at least aesthetically make them look better. How to do so was around fencing. If I look at one prime example, would be on Lincoln Road, one of our prime corridors. That'll probably be one of the most traversed places in all of the United States. There's 2 construction sites right now with this fencing, with just green fencing, and it's ripped. It looks awful. That is not the impression I want to give for the city, and extrapolate that towards any other site. As I understand it, Tom, my vision was to have some of these more decorative, higher quality fencings. Not a requirement, but is a possibility if a project owner or landowner would be so willing to do so, particularly if they had an exciting new project that was coming up. It'd be a great way to show that forward during a highly traveled time. But right now, unless you have permits or designs in place, our fencing requirement is just you need the chain link fence. Is that correct?
There's actually, if I could just explain briefly, there's 2 types of fences for vacant lots. If you have a construction site, and in order to qualify for a construction site, you have to have some type of building permit, then those types of fences allow for either a solid wood fence, a chain link fence, but if you're in a multifamily or commercial district, you have to put decorative, artistic types of wraps on it, like we do with the fence on our hotel site.
Yep.
So some of the.
That's exactly what I had in mind for this.
Yeah, so that's actually required under the code now. I think some of the sites that you're talking about on Lincoln Road, specifically Lincoln and Drexel, I don't know if they have a building permit, but if they do have a building permit, they're clearly in violation of the code because the fence is not supposed to look like that.
So where I was going with this ordinance, though, is the sites that may not have a building permit yet. I know where I live on Alton Road, right? There's just surface lots that are of no use and they just have green fencing. Even if somebody wanted to go above and beyond with the decorative fencing, the higher quality fencing, because there's not an active building permit, they would not be permitted to do so, correct?
That gets me to the next point, which are vacant lots that don't have a building permit and are not a construction site. Those sites technically are required to have an aluminum picket fence with a minimal landscape buffer for aesthetic purposes. And so those sites also are supposed to have an upgraded type of fence and not just a cheap chain link fence or something with green mesh that's ripping on it.
And I guess I don't want to force this right now, right? Because there's the thought, okay, these are higher costs, you're imposing that, it'll actually slow down progress. But for people that wanted to, that own these, and perhaps there's a project kind of years down the line, and they wanted to go above and beyond, and I don't know if there's things we could do to encourage and incentivize that, provide this decorative fencing, at least give them the optionality to do so. And I think that's where I was looking to land this ordinance.
Yeah, we could definitely modify the text that we have, the draft text that we came up with, to include a provision to allow vacant lots to have something other than just an aluminum picket fence. So if a vacant lot in, say, a commercial or multifamily district, instead of an aluminum picket fence, wanted to utilize a fence with those decorative graphics on it, which is, I think, what you're getting
Yes.
to. We could definitely write that into these regulations. That's not in the regulations now, but we could definitely write that
And
in.
apologies, it's been a little bit since we reviewed this together, but tell me what this ordinance as written does.
So what this ordinance does is it creates a provision for those sites that demolish a building and become a vacant lot
Yep.
to keep their construction fence for up to a year.
Yep.
And that would allow somebody to have that type of fence that you're talking about, but it applies to demolition permits. I think what you're talking about.
Expanding it,
Expanding it to beyond just demolition permits.
or just on demolition permits and vacant lots.
Demolition
Yes.
permits and vacant lots.
Colleagues, sound good?
Sounds good to me.
And again, this isn't imposing any cost that somebody wouldn't voluntarily want to bear.
Okay.
Because I know. that
This just
being-
allows them to have a nicer fence up for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Why would we want to have them to leave it up for a longer period of time?
Well, it's not leave it up for a longer period of time. It's just the fence is going to be up as long as the fence is. But right now, let's say there was a demolition or a vacant lot.
Like, let's use the old, the hostel that's being demolished on
Yeah.
West Avenue. Let's use that for an example.
Yep. So let's say that's where 1250 was going to be built, right?
Something's going to be built there.
Right,
Sure.
but let's say in the future, that's where that condo was going to be built. Right now, after they demolished Bikini Hostel, it wouldn't allow them to have the high-class, high-quality decorative sign until they actually had a building permit for their new project. They would just have the aluminum cast fence here. This would essentially, while they're working to get a building permit, to have the higher quality fence.
I'm totally supportive of this, but Tom, why was this? Is this just a misthought when this ordinance was originally adopted?
When this ordinance was fine-tuned about 3 years ago, the thought process at the time was that for vacant lots where there was no foreseeable construction project should consist of an aluminum picket type of barrier with landscaping. And that the type of fence where you would put those artistic graphics would be limited to construction sites. So I think what the proposal here is to expand the allowance for the artistic graphics to not just construction sites, but to vacant lots.
I think a great example is where the Medusa site is perhaps going to go. I don't know the feasibility there, but right next to the church on Lincoln Road, there's a plan in place. It went to the planning board, but correct me if I'm wrong, there's no building permit, right?
Correct.
And it looks like hell. That is one of the most traveled sites in, you can see in to these steel pillars that are in the ground, and it's embarrassing that that's on Lincoln Road. At least here, while you would have a vacant site, think about the fencing that the Convention Center Hotel had. That would look a heck of a lot better fronting Lincoln Road than what is currently there now.
Yeah. My, it's not really a concern, but just something to think about. There is this particular lot south of Fifth. It's a residential lot. It's on Second and Meridian.
Across
And
from the courts, like caddy corner to it?
no, it's between Second. No, it's on Second Street between Meridian and I believe Jefferson. And it's been empty for, I think, 15 years. And it is a chain link fence, and it's actually nice because it's all green, and you can see through it, and you see green space. I wonder if someone bought that property, whoever owns it now, and then puts a really nice fence there to be able to sell the property better. But by doing so, you kind of remove that sort of green aesthetic where you would walk by and just see green space instead of a very thick fence. I don't know. I mean, it's just something to think about between now and the commission meeting. And you're welcome to go by and check it out. But I don't want to have a situation where it's just used as a marketing. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's good or bad, but that is something to just keep in mind that these chain link fences. On one hand, yeah, you do look through them and you see, unsightly rebar. But on some situations, you just see really nice greenery and landscaping.
And Tom, maybe you could give some guidance, and maybe all of us could weigh in. Is what you're referring to the rule or the exception, right? Like across the city. I'm just thinking where I live, right on Alton Road. Russell has on 7th and Alton, right? It's surface parking lots, and you're looking through at God knows who's parking in there, and yeah, see, that's beautiful, right?
Yeah,
And perhaps that's actually more common for single-family homes. This is more like commercial sites that I'm envisioning.
This is RPS 1, right? And I don't know if we can do it for.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thought is perhaps what Commissioner Magazine is proposing would be limited to commercial districts, where I think that's the bigger issue. And something else that's important to point out to Commissioner Suarez's point is that one of the reasons that we went with the aluminum picket option, particularly in residential
the
districts.
see-through, right?
Exactly, so police could see what's going on in there, and so people wouldn't start to occupy the space, and nobody can see what's going on, so.
Yeah, like you do it with the Raleigh. Right?
Yep.
I mean, it's a beautiful fence, but you can't see beyond it.
Yeah, and if
And
there's
I don't
no
wanna-
construction going on.
Yeah.
Right, and
then-
I don't necessarily want to. I don't want to put that in a residential neighborhood where you can't see beyond it. So I don't know.
And because there's optionality here, I don't think somebody would choose to spend all this money for the higher end fence for a residential spot. It'd be somebody that has a restaurant coming or has a hotel or a condominium project coming, and they would.
But they could put like marketing material on the fence if they, and then it looks more marketable. I don't know. It's just.
But think about like the Grand Hyatt Hotel, right? What that looked like. It's just more kempt looking. So I'm fine in between this reading. We could think about ways to minimize it in residential districts. I think given it's optional and not forced, there's already going to be lack of incentive for somebody to do this around a residential project. But, if we want to firm that up a little bit, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So you can make the motion.
Yeah. So I'll,
Do you want this was a dual referral, So do you want this to come back to you, or do you want us to draft the ordinance and bring it to planning board so that the planning board?
Yeah, draft the ordinance, bring to the planning board, then to commission.
Okay. All right, I'll show that done by acclamation.
Great, now while we're on the topic of building permits, let's do item number 3.
Okay, item number 3 is discuss and review planning and zoning restrictions that delay the permit process and consider possible amendments.
I believe that's my item, Tom, if you can
Sure.
give us, the public, of what you have in mind.
Yeah, this was, the last time this was discussed by the Land Use Committee was on May 8th of last year, 2025. And they had
So it's
discussed.
been a year.
So it's been a year, yeah.
Okay, I hope you have some good stuff.
And so at that time, we had come up with some amendments to the LDRs that we felt could help streamline and simplify the permit review process as well as the regulatory review process. And these include, and the text is in the Land Use Committee memo, includes amending the required setbacks for the second floor of single-family homes in order to further simplify the regulations, modifying the habitable projections for architecturally significant single-family homes. This would be helpful, particularly for those projects where they're retaining a home and want to do an addition. We had also come up with some concepts for kind of more aggressive modifications, which would involve things like the calculation of unit size, the calculation of lot coverage. At the time, the Land Use Committee didn't recommend in favor of those, and they limited their direction to come up with these options here.
Can you go over the more aggressive, quote-unquote, options?
Sure. Right now, when, for instance, with single-family homes, when someone is designing either an addition to a single-family home or a new single-family home, they have to go through a wide array of regulations that involve things like the maximum unit size, which is the square footage, the maximum lot coverage, the overall height of the building, the minimum elevation as measured from freeboard, setbacks, minimum open space requirements in both a front yard and a rear yard. And then there are exceptions to those regulations to allow certain types of projections. And the regulations are designed to facilitate modern homes that are larger and taller, but have a lot of movement in them so that you don't get a big blocky type of building. One of the things that my staff has looked at is whether or not it would make sense to significantly simplify those regulations and basically create a box for an architect to design a home. And we believe that that could potentially speed up the regulations, because as
What do
long
you
as
mean
the
by
architect.
box?
Basically, by incorporating minimum setback requirements and current height limits, you would be providing the necessary space in between properties, as well as the necessary open space that is needed for on-site water retention and drainage, but really leaving it up to the architect to design a home to their client's wishes. And by limiting the overall height and the volume of the home to specific setbacks, but not having minimum requirements for things like open space or additional setbacks, or you can project a certain way into certain setbacks, that could significantly simplify the review process and speed up the permitting.
But by how much at the time?
It's hard to say. We were looking at it primarily from a planning standpoint. Single-family homes is what typically takes the longest time for planning to review because of the complexity of the regulations. So our thought process was, if we could simplify those regulations, it would make it faster for the reviewer to be able to get through a single-family home review.
And what was the concerns at the committee last?
I think the primary concern
Discussion.
is that you'd be relying on good architects. And our land development regulations are designed, unfortunately, for bad architects. So we can't tell a homeowner who to hire to design either their addition or their new home. And they could hire a really good architect that can come up with a really good design, and it doesn't really need to be overregulated. But someone else could hire a civil engineer who basically is going to design 4 walls with some window openings, basically a box. And if you start to get a lot of those, that could have an impact on the scale, character, and context of an area. So it's that balance that I think the committee had a concern with last time in terms of giving so much latitude to the architect or the engineer that the homeowner may choose to design the home.
So the regulations that we have now are designed, or they are in place to ensure that we have exactly what?
High-quality design.
Okay. And so, that being said, after a year, you come back with, can you repeat the couple?
So the regulations that we had come up with include modifications to the required setbacks for the second floor of single-family homes in order to simplify those requirements. Right now, 35% of the second floor is required to be set back from the front elevation, a minimum of 5 feet. And to provide more flexibility, we suggested that 35% of the enclosed second floor be set back a minimum of 35 feet from the front property line. That way, if somebody wants to give additional setback to the entirety of the building without stepping back the second floor, they would be able to do that.
Okay.
And then that would also apply to the street side elevation. And then on the habitable projections for architecturally significant homes, we've suggested that 1 or 2 story additions be allowed to follow the existing building line as long as there's a minimum of 5 feet. And so that would make it easier for people with existing homes to do additions, whether they're a 1-story linear addition or a 2-story addition.
Got it. Okay, so I guess what you guys have come back to us is a very, very watered down proposal of, well, I don't know if there's an appetite to rediscuss some of the more, aggressive regulation, restrictions, or reductions that the planning director has issued. But, I mean, yeah, I get it. On one hand, we kind of force people to have, I guess, a much better designed home. But on the other, time and time again, we hear building permit process is really cumbersome in Miami Beach. And, that is, people wonder why contractors don't want to work on Miami Beach or architects, because it's very difficult. And it ended up costing the homeowners a lot of money to hire these contractors. But on one hand, yeah, we basically force a design that we're okay with. I mean, so I don't know, my colleagues, what do you think about this?
Tom, I'll say, without getting into the granular details, if we don't improve this process, this will be the next thing that the state takes out of our hands, okay? And there's somebody I know directly because he told me, and it was littered with a lot of F words in between, so I won't repeat it, but he goes, there's somebody incredibly influential, has 3 lots on Sunset that he's looking to build. He goes, again, I'm leaving out the F words that I was the recipient of. I called the governor and I said, you need to take this permitting process out of the hands of a lot of more F words down in Miami Beach, right? And I get the argument of, okay, we want to have these stringent standards. I don't know, what are 3 lots on Sunset Island going for? $100 million? This guy's making a pretty big investment. I think he has a pretty aligned incentive to have pretty high architectural and design standards without us playing nanny and granny state.
You bring up a good point, Commissioner Magazine, that right now, I guess when this regulation, Tom, was adopted, it was many years ago, right? And
Yeah.
the property values at the time were probably not where they are today. They're probably quadrupled.
Correct.
Or more than that. I think if you're buying property in Miami Beach, you're not gonna just build a box, right? I mean, it's gonna cost you an arm and a leg to buy the lot or the property and then build it something that that should be beautiful. Commissioner Bott, what are your thoughts on this?
We see people building boxes all the time, and I agree with the sentiment of how do we simplify our regulations, how do we streamline the process. I've had experiences hearing from people who are frustrated, but I've also had experiences with people who are builders, who are architects, who say it's very simple, you just follow the rules and there are no issues. So my view would be to, instead of tinkering with what is, take a step back, take a look at the current market conditions. I mean, we didn't used to have people buying multiple lots and aggregating them and significantly changing the scale and the context of a community. And if that is the direction that our city is going in, I would argue that the laws that we have in the books don't really contemplate that properly. It's, tweaking things with a little bit of bubble gum and baling wire, when really we should take a step back and look holistically at, what do we want to incentivize here? And how do we protect the character of our community? Because it is okay to not be a mega millionaire and still live in Miami Beach. You shouldn't have to, live in the shadow of this hulking mega structure. You should also be allowed to build the home that you want if you're buying the property. So that's my position. I would like to take a step back, look holistically, reinvent from scratch as opposed to tweaking and doing things by half measures, so that we afford the communities, the neighbors, the protection of character of place, while also making it easier to ensure that we get good design on larger scale homes.
Well, Tom, I mean, this is something that your office has worked on, right? And the instruction or the referral to you was to come up with ways to lower the regulation process, correct? And without having to go start from scratch, would you start here? Is this something that you would do to help with the regulation? That's why I asked in the beginning, how much time and effort will this save a homeowner who is in the process of building a home?
Yeah, this referral was review options, come up with options that can address what is currently causing delays in the permit process, restrictions that delay the permit process. And so in looking at single-family homes, as all of you have correctly stated, it's a balance. I mean, going back to the late 90s, there was virtually no regulation on single-family homes. It was basically just, there was no maximum height. It was setbacks. You could build 3 stories as long as you met the setbacks. And then there started to become a problem with what we commonly refer to as monster homes or McMansions. And then that's when we had our first real set of substantive single-family regulations, and they've just sort of been built upon since then.
So why would you recommend something that kind of goes back to that, or does your proposal do that?
It does that, but it also creates boundaries. So somebody's not going to be able to just build whatever they want. You're going to be able to cap what the maximum height would be, cap what the setbacks would be, so you won't get anything that is more significant in terms of bulk and massing or height than you get now. But what you could end up with are homes that, particularly a new home that's going next to a much older home, we get this a lot, neighbors who have been there for 50 plus years complaining about a new home. And new homes are just bigger and taller. They have to be built higher,
But that's
and that's just,
going to happen anyways.
yeah.
We're
and
not
that-
changing that, right?
Right.
No, but by further loosening the regulations and relying on the architect to basically come up with ways that are going to address the impact of a new home on a neighbor, we're sort of taking that out of our responsibility and relying on an architect.
So right now, what could we address to reduce the impact of a neighbor that this proposal might take away?
What we were talking about in terms of really making a significant impact on the length of time that it takes to review a single-family home, it's a pretty radical change to the single-family development regulations. And it would basically be something along the lines of creating a minimum setback, minimum open space requirement, maximum height, but giving the homeowner and the architect the ability to do what they want within that box. And
How is that any different now?
well, right now, there's a whole host of regulations when you have a multi-story home. There's minimum setback requirements if the home is longer than 60 feet in length. There's setback requirements for the second floor, which we're trying to simplify a little bit here. There's restrictions on how far you can project certain things from the main home. There's minimum requirements for open space, for pervious area. Those could still be kept in some way, but when you factor in the different limitations on, say, roof decks, allowable projections, allowable height exceptions, all of those create a level of review that is somewhat lengthy. And if,
Tom, can I stop you there? Don't we have a pretty finite subset of architects in the city, right? The things that you're describing there, tell me they could be a pain in the rear having to navigate that, but I don't see how that prolongs the permit process, right? If architect A, B, and C, who, there's a small subset of them, they're fully aware of all these rules. So they have to design a home within the confines of all of this. But once they do, then why does that lengthen the permit process?
in our experience, when you look at it from start to finish, whether it's an architect who has a lot of experience designing homes on Miami Beach, and they are much better at that than somebody who might be new and is familiarizing themselves with the process. But because each home is a custom home, essentially, and every client wants something different in terms of their floor plan or the volume of the home or how it relates to a backyard, for instance, oftentimes they're trying to stretch the boundaries of what they're permitted to do. And it typically leads to meetings, conversations, comments. And that's not to say that every single family application ends up like that. But just
But if you want a vanilla home, like a bland home, then, and you don't want to go through a lengthy review process, that's what happens.
yeah, as long as you can meet all the different setback requirements, open space requirements, it's going to be a good-looking home because our code is designed to ensure that. What I was talking about was removing most of those regulations, and then within that box, the architect could basically design whatever they want within that volume. And a good architect's going to design a really good home. If somebody's combining 3 lots on Sunset Island or 8 lots on Star Island, it's going to be a pretty fantastic home. But you might get a dry lot in Mid-Beach where somebody says, I'm just going to hire a civil engineer and build a box. And it's a tall box, and it ends up having a negative impact
But
on
when
the
you mean
neighbor.
tall box, it's the same height that they would have to adhere to if this proposal goes forward or not.
Correct, but you wouldn't have the same requirements with regard to the setback of a second floor or the minimum open space indentations that you currently have if the home is more than 60 feet in length. There's a lot of nuances in the development regulations that require architects to think about movement in the home.
Let me ask this, Tom, you observe every commission meeting. We're just putting stuff on. Like, you know what? It's Tuesday night and I don't have any agenda items. Fuck, what can I think of? Oh, I'm just gonna throw in another regulation. I feel like that's how we got to our building code, right? Oh, if this is 65 feet in length, then you can't have a leprechaun gnome within 3 feet of it. Oh, that's great. Do I have unanimous consent? Put it on. And all of a sudden, now we have restrictions on where leprechaun gnomes can be. Only
But if you have a
after
regular
65, yeah, they're
A
fine.
regular gnome is fine.
I think you have an item for this Wednesday. But it's like, are these truly making, I don't know, right? Are these truly making our city better? Or is it just like, you know what, here's one, we're just death
After
by a thousand cuts.
Decade
So
after decade.
if I might, that's.
Struck a chord with it, no, I get it.
I'm here to fight for the gnomes. That's precisely my point of let's take a look at this and say, if we were doing this from scratch, Tom, if we were gonna plan this community and say we want to make a friction-free, as best as possible, permitting process, but we want to have some control over the outcome. Because it may not even be the architect, it might be a client who's like, screw the neighbors, they're not gonna know if it's 6 feet or 16 feet. And now all of a sudden you have an overhang that's overhanging somebody's pool deck. You know,
But that wouldn't happen.
but I'm saying, if we start reducing the safeguards that have been put in place, often in response to situations where people have had issues, let's go with a tabula rasa and say, if we were designing our city code to incentivize the best, most, friction-free permitting process to get the best possible outcome for the maximum number of homes, different styles of homes that could be built while preserving our character of place, what would that look like? Because, I take umbrage, if I might, I take umbrage at the notion that somebody is coming in and buying multiple lots and threatening to call the governor because he or she doesn't care for the way the process works. Well, if you're buying in Coral Gables, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's where you live, right? If you're buying and aggregating lots in Coral Gables, they have pretty tight zoning laws and building codes and design requirements. And I don't see people buying lots and aggregating them in Coral Gables and threatening, state preemption of Coral Gables process. And I don't think we should, I don't think
Well,
we should give in
let's hear
to
from
this
Tom.
here.
Is the Gables just as strict as here, or like?
It's a different type of strict. It's, their process is a
That's why
lot
we fix the whole
different,
process and not just tweak here and there.
but their outcome is a lot different as well.
I imagine all of
And
that.
their process is fixated on a very limited style of building, very limited style. Yeah, and that's all they want. And it has created a very homogeneous type of architectural form that's up for debate, but their process,
It's geared toward a specific type of
Yeah.
genre of.
But their regulations are not that much different than ours in terms of all the things that go into a single-family home. I know because I'm designing a detached garage for my own house, and there's a host of regulations. I speak the language, so it's a little easier for me, but for somebody who doesn't speak the language as well, they really rely on their architects, and so.
Right, and I, Commissioner Bott, I understand where you're coming from, maybe, I don't think we should start from ground zero to get to where we want to be. I'm more concerned about fixing what we have and really easing up on the many concerns that we all had. I mean, all of us got elected at the same time, and we all knocked on doors. And many people said the permitting process is a nightmare. I mean, especially in the single-family home districts. Look, how about we bring this back? And maybe maybe we find a middle ground. Because you do bring up some good points that, the second floor setback is 5 feet. Maybe you can bring back to us a suite of options that in order of, let's just say, effort that would reduce the the delay or the pain as far as getting a permit. And maybe we start there. And we can say, all right, well, and then you can also tell us why that is the way it is. But like what Commissioner Magazine said, you know, there are people out there who just have had so much, had fed up. And it's not just the millionaires or billionaires. These are just people who want to just get like a dry lot, I don't know, Normandy Island or Mid-Beach. And, you know, it's not super uber expensive, but, you know, I would venture to say that almost every plot of land on Miami Beach is $1 million. And so I think those people, anyone who's buying land here to build a house is going to probably hire a good architect at this point. And we hear from residents all the time that we need to remove or really deregulate this permit process. And do you think, Tom, that this would help? I mean, and I'm trying to ask you again, based on a percentage, how much would this help the permitting process? Ballpark figure of a percent. Maria, yeah. Mike's not on. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. I've been dying to jump into this conversation because, you know, we've been spearheading this effort to, you know, really get deep into the weeds as to what is really causing delays to the permit process. When I did the presentation on February 19th, and I know you were out of town, so you weren't in the chamber, based on the data that we have, we figured out that it takes, on average, about 5.5 months to get a permit for a regular single-family home. It takes about 3.5 months to do the same for commercial. So we have those 2-month differences.
When you mean a commercial, could that be a
Like-
condo?
No, condos are actually a lot easier. And condos today, through our walkthrough process, if you don't have a lot to do, you can just do it as a
Got
walkthrough
it.
and it's done. This is a regular single-family home, and then this is, let's say, a restaurant or a shop that's really gonna go into a commercial space and do a lot of construction. The difference between the two is about 2 months, and that's, you know, that's a lot. But we have this multi-pronged approach now that we wanna start carving away and chipping away at all of these little things. We did a big swoop over the last 1.5 years, but now
As it relates to single-family homes?
single-family homes and commercial spaces, both.
Got it.
But one of the things that we have painfully come to find is that whenever some of these design firms do not respond to our comments, and let's say they have 3 comments, but they only respond to 2 out of 3, that is killing us. That's killing us. And we have to figure out a way, and we're in the process of doing that, to try to keep that from happening. Because every single time that happens, it throws plans into another cycle. Every time plans go into another cycle, then it's another couple of weeks. So we have to figure that out. And because that's hurting the process a lot
But
when you
but
see.
you're saying that it's the owner's fault or the design's fault why the permit process is slowing down or
No, I
delayed?
mean, if you look at our data, we review plans very quickly. But when you look at the difference between how long they are with an owner and how long they are with us, it's 2 or 3 times longer.
Well, that's probably because they're responding to the comments, no? I mean, if
Well-
there are certain comments that, you know, they have to wrap their head around and it may take some
Yeah.
time, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, but if you, remember, I'm a registered architect in the state of Florida. So this was my world before I came into the public sector, when I was in the private sector. And our mission, when I was an architect, was to get these comments and understand them completely and respond to them one time. But that doesn't happen here. A lot of that doesn't happen. It's over and over and over. And that's a problem. And we have to try to fix that. And that means that we have to have meetings face-to-face, which we're trying to have now. Bring the design firms in with our once-a-week design day. All these things that we're trying to do, then that's what we have to do. But we were able, I had the data in my presentation, which was based on fiscal year data, where we have 84% of all of our plans, all of our permits issued within 3 cycles, 84%. But that last, percentage, 15%, where we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, up to 20 review cycles, is about 2,000 permits. And out of those, about 1,000 were 4 times. Then 900 were 5, 6, 7, all the way to 20. We have to figure out why that is, because that's unacceptable as far as, I think, unless people really don't understand what it is that they're responding to, and we have,
Well, I
a
think
great
I-
architect right here
I
who
think that's
could
I think that-
respond, but
I think that's a direct result of how many regulations we put on and they have to respond to, and that's why I'm asking Tom again. Tom, the approach that was heard last year, and I'm trying to get a percentage. How much of a percentage of the permit process will it take up, or not take up, but save?
That's,
In your professional opinion.
that's hard to quantify. From a planning review standpoint, I believe it could probably, and this would be a conservative estimate, potentially cut the review time in half. But that's for planning
for
review.
planning only.
Yeah, for planning only.
And how much of planning is the part of the review process?
It's one part. You have all the building disciplines that have to review it, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, structural, you have fire,
Urban forestry.
urban forestry, public works. So we're one part of it. Now, the planning regulations are easily probably the most complex because of that. And so it's a balance.
And,
It's
and
one-
you think conservatively, this might reduce that process by 50%,
the planning review,
the planning review,
yeah. And that's.
which
if-
is the most complex part of the.
Yeah.
Correct.
And that's assuming that they design it correctly with the more minimal regulations.
So, look, I think, again, colleagues, time and time again, we get calls, we get emails, we get talked to at Publix. Hey, we have, it took me forever to get this permit. We have an opportunity now to really change it and fundamentally cut it, at least the most complex part, by 50%, conservatively speaking. Well, let's bring this to commission. Let's see, let's see what the rest of the colleagues have to think about it, because I know, Mayor Minor campaigned on this, I campaigned on this, we all campaign on this, on really deregulating the permit process. And, we have an opportunity now to do that. So,
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I can't remember the last time where there was some sort of time period where me and my office were not working on prolonged permits, whether that be building permits, planning, or things like that. It is just a process that we are aligned that it needs to be addressed, but we sort of have to put our money where our mouth is, while also not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And it's about striking that balance.
So maybe look, we should bring this to the commission. I can't move the item. I would like to move it with all of the recommendations and see where it lands.
How long would it take to go through them?
So I think if this is something that you wanted to refer, what might make more sense at the commission level is to have a discussion to see whether all of your colleagues want to move forward in a more radical direction. Or if you want us to come up with some options to bring to the full commission, we could do that as well. It would be
Well-
more general, but if that's the direction, we could certainly, it wouldn't be for April 22nd, probably for May 20th,
Yeah,
but
I think you at least, I think you have the majority on this committee that really want to see radical changes to the permitting process as it relates to planning, which is the most complex. So-
Tom, give a summary of some of these changes. High level, if I typed in AI, give a 30-second summary. What's it spit out?
He's the AI.
it would basically be significantly modifying the regulations.
You already have me one.
Yeah, so that we would be relying on the architects to design a building that is contextually compatible. We would have safeguards in place so that they couldn't have overhangs into other people's property, that they didn't have a 20-foot wall, 5 foot from another person's property. There would have to be enough room for drainage and on-site water retention. But the regulations that we have in place now that are the most complex, that ensure.
On the inside.
Yeah, well, no, that it's for the outside, but it's basically with the inside of what the box that we would create. Those regulations, we would be relying on the architect to come up with that. And that's the biggest difference. It's something where the planning review would be cut substantially because we wouldn't have to have pre-meetings with architects.
And let me ask you, if this happens, does this free up your staff's time for other projects?
Yes, absolutely.
For projects such as what?
Commercial projects, multifamily projects, certificates of use.
And you said, I believe at the beginning of this item, you said that this significantly, the single-family homes is the most complex.
Correct.
And would you say it takes up the bulk of your staff's
In
time?
terms of permit review, it takes up, it's fair to say, the bulk of our time, our review time.
And perhaps the example that I used was not the best way to frame it, because I take to heart my friend and colleague Commissioner Bott's comments. So just that anecdotal example I used, to my knowledge, this person isn't doing anything outside of the code. It's not like he's aggregating lots where it's not allowed. He's not building taller or with more mass or density than is allowed. So whether that's 3 homes on Sunset Isle, or if he was building 1 home on Alton Road, he'd still be going through the same painful, prolonged process. So this isn't ditching any of those safeguards or things that kind of keep our character. It's just making this process a lot more facilitating.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, I'm under the impression that you can't aggregate 3 lots and build a home on 3 lots, right? It's 2 maximum?
He actually may be actually building 3 separate homes. I don't know.
You can do up to 3 lots. The 3rd lot either has to be open space for
Right.
things like court games,
Yeah, like
or
a paddle court.
there's very strict setback requirements if you put the home in the middle, but the maximum is 3.
Right, okay. Okay, well, would you like to make a motion?
Maybe. I'll make a motion.
It would be basically, I think, to move these recommendations as well as additional recommendations that the planning department comes up with to address the permitting issues, bring that to the commission as an R9 discussion item.
But at what point would the additional recommendations from the planning department be discussed directly at the commission meeting?
Correct.
So we'll go down like one by one,
Okay.
not just high level and theoretical?
Yep.
Yeah, because I'm not comfortable, like, I don't want to just give carte
Yep.
blanche. Yeah, go ahead. I want to get into the meat and potatoes.
And then the commission could decide what they want to refer to the planning board as an LDR amendment at that meeting.
Yeah, I mean, look, guys, this is a big item, right? I mean, if we're telling our voters that we can fundamentally cut down a lot of the time, money, headaches, as far as a building permit is concerned, I mean, it's a win-win for everyone. It's even a win for staff, apparently, because a bulk of their time is really spent reviewing these planning.
I mean, imagine the person that's not a billionaire doing this, just a normal person, and you're telling them, you know what, you actually have to carry 2 homes and fund an entire staff that's going through all of this for 5 months, for 8 months, for a year, right? What normal person can do that?
Can I ask, through the chair, since we happen to have some architects in the audience, would you guys mind giving your thoughts on what you've heard?
We're
Yes, please.
Well, come here. I'm the landscape architect. We're not prepared for this. She's the architect. One thing we see a lot is from the architect side, the consultant side. We send in comments to the planning departments and to the building departments, et cetera, and we send it in, and it gets sent back, and we said, we answered this, asked and answered. And it keeps on coming back at us 4 or 5 or 6 times. Wait a minute, is anybody reading this? This happens not only in the city of Miami Beach, it happens in the city of Miami, every municipality you see. Part of this is the process, we think, from what's changed in how you move plans through thinking people.
Yeah, but
Okay?
imagine if you didn't have to have comments on the most.
No, we want, I'm careful when you unleash deregulatory powers onto the neighborhoods of Miami Beach. You may not know what you're getting, and that's scary. That's a little scary. With the old days, and I'm not sure if you have time for this, I think it would cut down the back and forth, at least through the back, is you sat down, you brought in your roll of drawings, you sat down, you rolled them out, you had one guy who knows what, on their side, knows exactly what they're talking about, and you would just sign off. Yep, signed off in yellow, remember that?
Why doesn't that happen? Very simple.
It
and I
was so
wondering.
simple. It was easy, and you could have a rapport with the person, and you could see the people you're dealing with. It helped immensely.
So why doesn't that
Yeah,
happen?
sometimes it's a matter of interpretation. You know, you have a lot of regulations, and I think it's important sometimes to talk to the person that is reviewing the drawings to understand exactly what it meant, you know, because sometimes you read the regulation and you don't know exactly what they are asking. The other thing that has changed.
So what did
I
you say?
think,
You made a good point. What did you say? You read a
that
regulation?
sometimes it's important when you get, for example, your second comment, and you want to talk to a reviewer, because it's important to have that report and to understand exactly because you might have a different interpretation. And sometimes we as architects, we are a little more creative than the reviewer, and we see things in a little different way, and it's perfectly allowable. But you want that interpretation to get through the reviewer, because that might happen to that reviewer in a different situation, and he might see it in a different way. So I think that report sometimes is very important. The other thing that is, I think that has changed, and I think maybe through the pandemic, was the review process. You know, you have to send the whole set of drawings. You have one little comment, but you have to file the whole set of drawings, et cetera, et cetera. And that takes time.
That's a larger problem as far as the review permitting process. At least what this item is doing is just the planning part of the building permit, which our planning director says is the most complex. And so,
But
that's.
you're saying that happens during the planning process as well.
That happens throughout the whole
Design
process,
process.
design process. It's that
So-
you have to, every time you do a change, you have to send the whole set of drawings, even if it's a minor MEP change. You have to compile all the drawings, you have to ask everybody, all the consultants to sign and seal all the drawings.
current
And so it takes time also from the side of a
And
consultant.
that adds cost as well.
And that has cost as
Tom,
well.
two
So it's all
questions.
these little things that, you know.
Just
that-
two questions for you. So, as we've talked about during the permitting process from the building department, there's a desire to have a single point of contact all the way through so that you don't have, Inspector X second-guessing Inspector Y's original comments. So, and I think that's a goal that we're moving towards. Is that an achievable goal in plan review as well? To have one person look at the plans from start to finish anytime there are follow-ups?
We already have that.
Okay, you already have that. And then why does the plan need to come back, not just the one thing that's been adjusted, but the entirety of the plans re-signed, resealed, recertified, sent over again?
The electronic plan review, in order to maintain the custody of control, it has to be reprocessed to make sure that every page has the same stamp. It is something we're working on. We're trying to address that. We all recognize that it's an issue, but it is something that we're working through. It's not unique to planning, it's all disciplines go through this.
But if this electronic planning review process adds time and cost burden to the process, what is the benefit of having this electronic process? Why don't we go back to sitting in a room with one set of plans and working through the issues on the spot and being done with it?
In my experience, most architects and design professionals much prefer the electronic plan review. It's faster, it's more efficient. They can meet with us. If there's an issue, my staff is available, and my staff frequently meets with people to go over outstanding comments or remaining comments.
And you said you're working on addressing this glitch in the system or feature, depending on how you look at it, that anytime a change is made, that then requires the entirety of the plan to be recertified and resubmitted. Is that imminent? Is that on the horizon in our lifetimes?
I didn't
Yes.
get a clear answer on that, Tom. Why? Why is that? Why does it have to go, why does it have to be resubmitted through all disciplines?
Commissioners, the chain of custody is something that's very important, especially when you have a lot of revisions, which happens a lot, right? Because at the end, when you have to get a CU or you have to occupy, all of this has to sort of come together. So, electronic plans, it's the good news and the bad news, right? The good news is you can look at plans from anywhere in the world, you log on and you can have multiple consultants, but.
We're talking about specifically resubmitting and having to go through every single discipline again. Why does it have to go, if it's just a minor tweak to, let's say,
Where the outlets are.
yeah, like you're moving an air conditioner.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
You're
we're-
moving an outlet from this wall to that wall. Why does it have to go to plumbing?
Well, we are working on refining that. We're trying to figure out what permit types only have to go to certain people rather than everybody. And we're working on refining that at this next level. We're actually going to bring back Bob Moran to be able to do that, so that doesn't happen anymore. We're also putting in
Is this
the
a-
reviewers.
Is this a technical issue or is this,
It's a combination.
is it a legal issue?
Legal issue, that's a good question. I've never heard of it being a legal issue.
I mean, legal meaning like in order for us to not be liable for any issues at the end of this process where it's our fault that something wasn't supposed to be there. Is that why we have this, where every discipline has to sign off on any sort of minor tweak?
That's the way our system is set up right now,
It's a
but we're
technical glitch,
working on
or glitch, not
changing
glitch,
that.
but-
It's not
Could we-
easy.
could
It's
we-
not easy. It's gonna require going through every permit type in order to start weeding out what really doesn't apply. Where you see a lot of this, especially, is with like condominiums, because so many things come into condominiums, and yet condominiums are like 4 things. So that's gonna be the next level that we're already working on to fix and undo. We also have brought in the Professionals Day, which is once a week, where professionals can come and have a one-on-one with every discipline, just like a walkthrough, but it's only for architects and professionals.
And this is
good.
something that is all disciplines, right? This isn't
Correct.
just planning.
Correct.
I think, and I want to kind of bring us back to where we are with this item.
Mm-hmm.
This item is specifically addressing
Planning.
right? And we have the planning director that thinks that some of the, if we can adopt many of these à la carte deregulations, and if we did all of them, we could conservatively reduce it by 50%. I don't think we're gonna deregulate all of them. But we want to deregulate as much as we can. Because what Commissioner Magazine mentioned, there might have been a commissioner, many years ago that said, oh, well, I don't like this, so let's just put this law in, and that law exists on the books forever, and it just never goes away, unfortunately. So let's bring this back to, or let's refer this to commission and see what you guys can bring. And when do you want to bring, May?
Yeah, there's no way I could get something to you in April. We can try.
Are you still going to be with us in May, Tom?
I will still be with you in May, yes.
Okay, good.
So, I think May is a good time for that.
Okay.
Tom, I did notice just the timing where, getting up there in your career and you said you're building a detached garage. Is that you're like, you know what? Might be spending a lot more time with the family. Let's get the permits for my man cave in place now.
Okay, so Commissioner Magazine made a motion, seconded. I think we can adopt this by acclamation. Great. Okay, on the topic of, well, let's get to why some of the residents are here to discuss. So let's do items 4 and 5.
Okay, I'll read these into the record. Item 4 is discuss developing all of the west lots lying along Collins Avenue between 79th Street and 87th Street into a planned city park. And item number 5 is discuss future programming of the west lots.
And I want to thank Commissioner Bott for co-priming this with me. I think, we want to see the best possible use of the west lots. I had to leave yesterday for the discussion of the log cabin, possibly going back to the west lot, so that might be a thing now. So we want to keep that in mind. And I'll, Commissioner Bott, did you want to also say anything?
Feel free.
Okay, so, John, you want to take it away?
Sure. John Rebar, I'm Director of Parks, Facilities, Fleet, and Beaches. And we were here just last week, and we were asked to reach out to Sabino Miller, who designed Bayshore Park, among their parks, to just get their take on, the west lots and maybe looking at a park master plan scenario rather than piecemealing it. So they are here. If we'd like to just start with them.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much.
And thanks for giving your thoughts on the building permit process.
Anybody into trouble earlier? Anyway, when John called us last week to take a look at this, and we just wanted to, first of all, understand what's going on there before we make any recommendations. So we kind of went and did kind of an inventory analysis of what's happening. I don't know if you can see the screen. Is it? It's there. Yeah. And so we kind of went in each one of it's 8 lots, goes from 79th Street all the way to 87th Street. And it's across the street from North Shore Park, North Beach Ocean Side Park. And it's between Collins and Harding, actually an alley before going to Harding. So these 8 lots are interesting. Each one has a different use. And for example, the first one from 79 to 80th Street is a Miami-Dade fire rescue and parking lot. Then we have the next one is a parking lot. The next one is cat rescue.
Right now, it has some haphazard use right now.
Yeah, it seems like it's ad hoc,
Yeah.
as the city needed to find a home for these uses. It seems like, well, these lots were available, and that's what happened. That's our impression. It does have a skate park. There is a couple of open green spaces, and
Okay.
that's generally what we saw there. How do I go here? Next, I guess here. So we took a look at different character of each one of the lots. Some of them have beautiful trees. Some of them are just not that pretty. Some fences around. The skate park seems a little, how do you call that?
It can be improved,
Exactly, could be improved.
expanded and improved.
We are not sure if these uses respond to the community next to it, and that's another thing that we wonder. We have a beautiful park across the street that is very pastoral, super green, has some playgrounds, et cetera, and a dog park. And these lots could be, for the way we see it, support maybe to the park across the street. You have some community garden there as well. So
Compost spot.
Yeah, compost, yeah, actually, not community garden, it's a compost
Compost
pile.
collection.
Then we saw also how do you call that? The traffic patterns. You have 79th Street that goes all the way connecting connects actually the city from one end to the other, from that park and beyond. 81st Street also. And I think, hold on one second, 85th Street. Those are the ones that go through and connect the rest of the city. And so that's important to understand. And also, those have also the main entries to the park across the street, and crosswalks and street lights. So those are important to understand in principle what's happening there. What in general,
Go back up to that for a second.
yeah.
It's the street types, the east-west street types. It's important to realize I think there's two ways. Those are going to be wider, and there's parallel parking. And there's three one-ways. All the one-ways are westbound. So this is easier to look through. There's one street in particular that doesn't go through at all. It stops a block in. So we think that might be a potential opportunity to create a gathering spot.
It's 82nd Street,
82nd
which is is where the skate park is. That's an interesting street because
Right.
it dead ends on some residential, and that little street just serves a couple of buildings in each side. So that was kind of an interesting discovery that could be an opportunity for a future, tying the lots together. Then what we see here in general is the idea of creating, well, this is the zoning around it. Mostly is multifamily low intensity to the west side. We have some multifamily high intensity to the south, and single family residential close by. This is the paving and tree canopy coverage. You can see there is, of course, across the street a lot of tree canopy, and in those lots, very sparse, some of them, and some of them, there is actually some beautiful specimen trees there that will be good to take advantage of. This is like a street section from the alley all the way to the park. Mm-hmm. And also we notice that there is an overhead electric across the alley. There is some parking there, informal parking, that serves the buildings to the west. And then there is this 175 feet, pretty much each lot. And then you have Collins Avenue, which is pretty wide. You have 2 lanes of parking and then 3 lanes of traffic. Northbound on Collins Avenue.
The other, on the alley, this might be ad hoc too. Along the alley, it's one-way southbound. The section shows that everyone just parks, they pull in there, it's 90-degree parking along that alley. We think it's more for the residential places along there than anybody else. Maybe for some of the fire lifeguard station folks, but people use that. You see the car parked there. People use that often. So
Yeah, it's not technically a parking spot.
not technically at all.
It's just
but
not paved.
It's
gravel.
useful. Yeah, it is definitely being used, and so it could be considered in any kind of future kind of parking calculation,
Okay.
if you will.
So what we see here is almost like a gap between the community and the park. There is like this blank gap that doesn't tie the whole thing together. So what we would like to envision here is to create a park district. So it's something that ties the 2 sides together, like pretty much like you have Central Park in New York. It has streets that cross and everything, but the perception is that one thing. And I think this should be the same perception, even though you have Collins Avenue. If you add canopy on the west side, starts tying the whole thing together. So we think that that's an important element. And also east-west, you use some of those corridors as tying it to the community, and the whole thing starts working together. What we see is kind of like this gap, this very detached area. And then the big question is, what type of uses do we need? What uses can stay that we have the assumption, okay, these are going to remain, and what uses are desirable? And we don't want to say exactly what before
Right, I mean,
knowing
that's a community
exactly.
process.
That's a
That's
community
your-
process, and
That would
that's
just be one person's opinion.
What do you guys want?
understanding. But what we,
What does John want?
Yeah.
What does the city need?
yeah, what
Okay,
but when we see like there is two easements connecting to the ocean directly. One is on 79 and one is on 87 that has those two straight connections to the ocean. Then we see the potential of 82nd Street as a little pedestrian element that can tie together. We don't know if other streets can be closed. Maybe they can.
They can.
And then using the main entrances to the park as maybe the places where those corridors can happen, connecting to the community. So, and then there is all sorts of activities that can happen. You know, we maybe some passive, some more active, some, maybe an event space, maybe a concession.
Go ahead and say it, pickleball.
What's that? Maybe pickleball, I don't know. I don't know what the uses, what the community, we have also, with the skate park, maybe that can be expanded and maybe add something for teenagers. It seems like the park across the street has something for children, like a playground. Maybe that can be expanded, that other lot for
Older kids.
There's also
Older kids,
programming things you could do to activate the park, food and drinks, a cafe, a little small donut place, or a little cafecita, a little, what's the ventanita, ventanita, along that kind of desolate alley there.
So
That's important.
Yeah. So you got, are there any more slides?
That's it.
Okay.
I think there is, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, that's a great analysis of what we have there.
Very, very fast. This is from like Friday till
And I don't,
till last night.
and I don't want to put the cart before the horse, Commissioner Bod, but I think it's important to really get, I don't know, do some community feedback on perhaps we send out a survey to North Beach and we say, what do you want to see happen on the west lot, and maybe give a menu of options and then have the survey come back with the top, in order of preference.
So I believe is John still here? John Rebar? Oh, sorry. You're so short, I couldn't see you, John. We've done that, and I think it was included in a prior iteration of a memo. We have feedback on what people want to see, and it's been ranked, and I always want to have community input, but I would rather, instead of once again going back to the community with the same question, say, okay, we've heard your input, and we'd like to propose, this is a vision to incorporate the things that you have said you wanted to see, and actually have, instead of a survey, have a community meeting with a presentation and a charrette, and say, do you want more of this? Do you, now that you see it, do you not want this at all? Have a conversation, have it be interactive, but go not with just another survey, go with a proposal. And I think the things that, I love the idea of having a little food, beverage, ventanita, cafe, something where it won't affect people, because that's kind of a desert up there. We have desire to have courts of various kinds, expand the skate park to, what'd you call it, John?
A pump track or an all-wheels track?
Pump track, that's right. An all-wheel track, to make it be more,
Presentable.
not just presentable, but more thoughtful in how the things that have to stay, right? Because right now, what's happened with the West Lots is, as you pointed out, it's the dumping ground. And nobody has touched anything that hasn't already been utilized, because nobody wants to propose anything that would potentially risk the sanctity of preserving green space. So we've talked to Jose in transportation, there's the opportunity to close off a number of those streets. And I love the idea of making the thoroughfares, the bottom and topmost and one through the middle where it makes sense, and then close the rest off. It's not like we're making people go 10 blocks. They're going an extra block. But the benefit is you have a much more cohesive, robust park. Maybe we even take a look at some point at building a walk over a pedestrian bridge to connect this part of the park to the other part. I think there's a lot of stuff that we can propose. The CRA can fund a fair amount of this. I know there's about $5 million already in GO bond funding. So we have some funds to work with, and we move forward in that manner. I also want to make sure that while we're not going to give up the functionality of the things that are already there unless we're able to, is there a way to reposition them or shrink a footprint if it's no longer necessary, or maybe expand it in a different way so that, maybe the kiddie campus is not just like a bunch of trailers, but now it's actually a campus and people can wander in and out and look at the cats, healing up from their medical procedures or whatever. Like, is there a way to be more thoughtful and intentional about all of that space? Because it is a gift to have that many unencumbered blocks of mostly green space in the middle of a city. And the fact that it happens to be across the street from a park, great, doesn't mean it's less valuable. So that's how I think we should proceed. I think we have very clear direction from the community about what they'd like to see there.
And so, John, for the public, what was the top, 5 requests for?
Sure, the survey is closed a year ago, so it's fairly current.
Close to what?
The survey closed a year ago, so this is fairly recent data for surveys. Green space, number 1, parking, number 2.
Park what?
Parking, number 2.
Parking, okay.
Sorry, I'll slow down. Parking, number 2. Social space, number 3. Fitness or fitness gym, I think they're talking like a Muscle Beach, an outdoor fitness thing. Food trucks, farmers market, 1, 2, 3, number 5.
And for the record, we have an item separate from this completely of a farmer's market going into the open space park. That's coming at the next commission meeting, or next land use meeting, I think.
Yeah.
I don't remember where it is, but anyhow, it's coming, and so we don't need to put a farmer's market into this portion. In fact, that's where we started off with a farmer's market and decided to actually be better in the open space park because it's more inviting space and with fewer logistics obstacles.
Yeah, when you look at the answers to the surveys, that's literally what we have there now, except maybe like the fitness component, right? Which you could technically say is a skate park, right? Because we have green space, we have parking, maybe not the social aspect, obviously, but yeah. I mean, look, I'm okay with having staff. Maybe instead of giving one proposal, maybe give 2 or 3 to go to community with it. I don't want to just go to the community and say, hey, look, this is our plan. What do you think? How about we give 2 to 3 options that we can work collaboratively on and say, hey, what do you guys think about options A, B, or C?
When we were looking at the QEC, I think, was working with the school board on the park space for the field at Biscayne Beach. And they had 2 options that they came with. They effectually did the same sort of thing, but showed different kinds of layouts. I think maybe like something like that. We have option A, option B, but then we can sort of move elements around a little bit.
We'd start with the program and a survey, obviously, that's been the popular choice, and we'd go ride with that and then figure out a way how we can facilitate creating a cohesive park experience within that framework, just make it a more pleasant experience, essentially.
Yeah, and I'm okay also with vacating some of those streets because I think it makes sense and we get more value out of potentially more green space. One of the things I think I said at the last meeting is I think it would be great to have like a soccer field there.
Absolutely.
And you're accomplishing more than one of those goals, right? Which is green space.
It is
April
here.
Fool's guy over here. Green space, social activity, fitness. You're literally, capturing all 3 sort of those priorities from the residents. And I would certainly hope that that's one of the options on that we can present to the community.
Yeah, so I stopped at 5, but then it gets into racket sports, soccer fields, those active activities come in next.
I mean, the results are very aligned with what we've discussed. There's nothing surprising. Nobody wants an outdoor bowling alley or, you know,
Yeah, and
it's-
then we're hopefully we're gonna have a paid-free Muscle Beach on the sand, so we don't necessarily have to put it in the west lots. We can use it, you know, we can have something else that we wouldn't necessarily have to have on the sand as far as muscle.
Right, and that's the beauty of a master plan. You can look at your supporting amenities nearby.
What were you were gonna say something?
Hey, let me see your list. This is the first one I've seen the list. The municipal 50-meter pool, that's Olympic-sized pool, that's out.
that's out. That's
out.
going on
Okay.
72nd
That's on
Street complex.
72nd.
There's room for it.
Well,
Let's make that clear.
Commissioner, I mean, I don't know that, you know what? Who knows? Because
It's big and it would require a lot of parking and it would take a lot of stuff
It would-
to make it work on a thin lot.
I would rather see soccer fields there
Yeah.
than, and also the 72nd Street complex is ready to break ground next year, I think.
also,
That's.
I missed the discussion.
Oh, good.
I believe it was yesterday for the log cabin. I don't know if the log cabin, I don't know where the commission's gonna go on this, but the log cabin may wanna go back to the west lots.
Yep.
So, you know, that's another curveball. Maybe we use that as the cafe that, you know, we've been talking about. And then, you know, I understand it's gonna cost extra money to do that. Perhaps we get, you know, a vendor to come in to cover those costs and operate it so that we don't, you know, we don't have to cover the added expenses of bringing it back to the west lots. And we kill two birds with one stone.
Well, John just told me that there's one in design right now up at 72nd Street. The pool. So.
What?
On the
What is-
Olympic
what is it?
pool.
The pool.
If that's
Yeah,
your.
Oh, yeah, that's a separate,
Okay,
no,
all
we're
right,
talking
just wanna
about,
make sure we're talking
we're
about.
talking about the log cabin.
No,
The
no, no.
72nd Street complex is going to have an Olympic competition caliber pool on the roof, 600-plus parking spots, a gym, a running track around it, community space. The library will be moved from where it is on the ocean into a state-of-the-art facility at 72nd Street. It's going to be a whole contained multiverse of family activities.
So anyways, what I was saying is with the log cabin, that is another curveball that we may want to consider to put back on the west lots. So,
Are they still an entity, the log cabin?
No,
In Miami
Yeah,
Beach.
the group that used to
No.
be there, that's what you're talking
They are
about.
not there anymore.
okay, so where do we take it, where do you suggest we take it from here?
I guess I'm gonna look over here for a little guidance. I think we need a recommendation to commission directing staff to engage in a conceptual plan as a first step of a master plan to be presented in a community charrette with 2 to 3 options.
So do you need, this needs to be referred to commission for you?
That's what referral.
So we can't do that from our committee to instruct staff to put this together?
Normally, committees do not instruct staff. It has to go through commission.
Right, I
Nick?
think if the administration is going to formally engage Sabino and Miller to do the master plan, I think the commission would need to vote to do that.
Is that going to consider, are we going to need a waiver for that?
No, because, well, I don't think so, because they are they're pre-qualified for landscape architecture services. So
Yes,
I
they're on
think
our
that could
rotational.
include a master plan for the park.
I believe so, but I can check.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has to go to commission for commission to vote to have a sort of master plan for a conceptual design for the west lots. And then staff would go to Mr. Miller and you'd come back to the committee or you come back to the commission?
Well, what you could do is if you wanted to keep this item in committee
it
and
should probably
continue.
go to neighborhoods though, because that's where technically park stuff is supposed to go.
So then,
It would have to go with-
Commissioner Bott, would you like to place an item on the next commission agenda to refer it to neighborhoods?
Once it comes back, yeah.
Okay.
But wouldn't you want to do it in land use? Because it's on the land?
No,
Or-
I mean,
Well, there are two aspects of this. I think any changes
We're
to,
going to be vacating streets. We may have to
so
go
we
to-
can keep it here to talk about the land use and the regulation stuff, but in terms of the programming, that's a neighborhoods
well,
discussion.
because Parks and Rec is, you're right, Commissioner, Parks and Rec is one of the is typically before neighborhoods. Any of the land use issues could be addressed here.
So it'd have to be both committees. Okay. Sure, I mean, I'd like to speed up as much as possible, but, sure. So again, we're gonna refer it to commission, commission's gonna approve it. And then after they have a product, they go back to both land use and neighborhoods?
Well, I would recommend keeping the discussion in land use anyway. Don't send the whole item back to the commission. I think the recommendation to the city commission would be to engage Savino and Miller for purposes of the conceptual master plan, but keep the item in committee, and then Commissioner Bott's going to sponsor a separate item to refer to neighborhoods. So that you can discuss the programming in neighborhoods.
John, from a size perspective, how many acres is this? Maybe give that in context, Bay Shore.
I did not measure the acres.
About
as well.
15 acres. Bay Shore is 20.
I mean, there's few opportunities in the world that are this unique, and I'd be remiss if we didn't shoot for the stars.
100%.
Literally, we're sending people to Mars now. We can do something special
Can I
here.
volunteer some people?
We can do something world-class. One of the things that I often have caveats with Miami Beach is, besides our natural resources, right, what do we have that's world-class, where you go, wow, right? South Point Park, Bay Shore Park.
Thank you.
Thank
Right.
you for both.
I want at least an option on the table that when you Google what are some of the most unique man-made things in the world, it's right here in Miami Beach.
Yeah.
And this is the best opportunity for that. When I think about things, I don't have anything specific in mind, but Singapore Gardens by the Bay, right? Something where it doesn't matter where you're from, that is wow. We're Miami Beach, right? At the end of the day, we are Miami Beach, and we deserve that. So I'd love to see some sort of hybrid mix of these passive usages, these active usages, but then also from an aesthetic standpoint, where it is just, oh my gosh, we can do things like this here. I have renewed faith in humanity.
Well, so to that point, I literally tell people about Bay Shore Park. And as you guys know, I was on the HOA with you guys 20-something years ago, 15 years ago, to try to get that project moving. And it was a labor of love for 30-plus years. And it was a lot of heartbreak and a lot of effort and a lot of time and resources. And I literally get emotional when I get into that park. And I tell people who have not yet visited, if you haven't gone to Bay Shore Park, you really must treat yourself, because it will restore your faith in government. It shows what can be done.
It's not finished.
We just
yet.
don't want it to take 30 years.
And so that's why when I saw what you did with that under-cherished plot of green space that had been kicked around and used it as a toxic dumping ground after hurricanes and construction staging and all the things, and how you have transformed it, that is what I want for the West Lots. North
we
Beach
love the
deserves,
challenge.
North Beach deserves an equally thought-out, meaningful, intentional green space. And yes, the North Shore Open Space Park is stunning and is its own thing, and nobody takes away anything from that, but this is different. And this is going to be built for and by the community for generations to come. And as Joe said, it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something like this.
I just want to close by saying one of my hero landscape architects, Lawrence Halpern, said, "You only as good as your client." That was the thing to be cautious of. You can talk about all your great design skills, but the client, okay, and I got to say, the Miami Beach Parks Department has done, like almost unbeknownst to, like, over the last 20, 30 years, has done amazing parks. South Point Park, that we were involved with for a long time.
Park,
Soundscape Park.
Morris Gardens
No-
Park.
Oceanside Park, that preservation of that hammock is amazing. Not a lot of cities wouldn't have done that. So I think they're world-class in what they set the table already. So it's been a pleasure working with the Parks Department and who have given us a lot of latitude to
So, all right, so,
stretch things.
you guys want to make a motion?
So I want to move this to the full commission to initiate a master plan, and I would like to refer it to neighborhoods.
You want to keep these items at land use for additional updates, and so continue both to a future date?
Correct.
Okay.
And, you know, just the elephant in the room, previous commissions have had legacy projects, right? I don't know what ours is. I'm glad we got rid of the lawn gnome setbacks. Whether that's my legacy or not, I don't know. But these are big ticket items, you know. I don't know where November will land with the property tax exemptions and things like that, but we did have in 2017 a large geo bond for parks across the city. Perhaps this could be more honed in, or there's projects that aren't moving forward, Maria, that could be reallocated to here. But if we're going to do something that is legacy and world-class, like, we need to do it right.
Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, I think we have about $5 million from the GEO bond fund.
That's correct.
And also CRA funds are permitted to be used for this kind of permanent collective neighborhood improvement. So again, this is not the expensive part. This is the planning stage. So we don't need to have all the money in the account tomorrow. But we will have a pretty significant chunk of change to play with between the GEO bond and the CRA.
Commissioners?
And we'll see what we need, if we need anything beyond that.
If I may, the commissioner's right. We have $5 million in the GEO bond specifically for West Lots, and it was always considered seed money. So that always implied that it was just, going to start, and then it would grow from that. We also have a GEO bond for the skate park, which there's money that has not been used, so we have that.
How much?
We had $750,000. I think we've used, John, about a couple of $100,000. I know that we needed more because we had to build the bathroom
Right.
for the skate park. So that became a sort of budget killer for us when we wanted to do the expansion. But we have a design done and everything. It's really beautiful, and it keeps the trees. It was really nice back then, so we have that. And we also had a grant from the Skateboarder Foundation, or whatever they're called. We had about $250,000 for that. And then, of course, we have $1 million for the log cabin. I know that we need more funding for that, but those are the three things that we have in the GEO bond that take all this into consideration.
We could even think the types of people that move to our city, I think we'd be more ambitious. We could do private fundraising, and this could be, instead of people that live on Sunset and they're donating $10 million to the Perez Art Museum because there's nowhere in Miami Beach to donate. We should set a goal of a $50 million park here to go out and privately fundraise, where people that care about their legacy being remembered for generations to come can make a once-in-a-lifetime impact on Miami Beach, and we truly shoot for the stars on this.
That's exactly what Commissioner Mateo Salinas was talking about, naming rights, and, it doesn't always have to come from taxpayers. If there's going to be, a desire for private funding, that's a great step, and, I commend Commissioner Mateo Salinas for thinking about that, and really thinking outside of the box. Okay, so, I don't think I second the motion. So we're going to keep it in committee and land use. There's going to be a separate referral to neighborhoods to discuss the programming, Commissioner. And that's after we get back some reports from the team, from the design team. And it would be nice before we do go to neighborhoods, perhaps Commissioner Bott, since we're going to be championing this together, maybe we just have a sunshine meeting, just you and I and the design team, to just quickly go over that so that we're all on the same page. Sure. Commissioner? Okay, great. All right, so thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your input earlier. Okay.
Maria, Tom.
And then I want to just do a couple more. Commissioner Bott, the number 6?
Sure. Item number 6 is consider amendments to the comprehensive plan and land development regulations to incentivize the abandonment of retail or package sales of alcoholic beverages by businesses located along Lincoln Road.
Okay, Commissioner?
So this is, in our current environment of being preempted by the state, we have to proceed carefully. But this is in response to a cluster of stores along Washington and 17th and Lincoln that sell alcohol, single-use, what?
I'm thinking of these stores, they're disgusting.
Yeah, single-use, single-serve alcohol, and it sort of creates a landing spot for people to buy a single-serve drink and hang out at the bus stop and drink and make it gross and unpleasant for residents and unwelcoming for businesses. And so, Tom, if you would go through it, the goal is to incentivize different, better use. And it's a long shot. I understand that, but I would rather have something that aims to change this behavior in a way that we can, rather than just wish and hope that it would get better on its
I
own,
think it ties in well with priority item number 1.
which is what?
And Tom, Commissioner, where do they sell, where's their packaged liquor stores along Lincoln Road?
There's no packaged liquor stores on Lincoln Road east of or west of Washington Avenue. There are a couple of package stores that are closer to Collins. Some are just south of Lincoln Road. One is
They're
actually.
not on Lincoln Road.
The only one on
No.
Lincoln Road is next to Walgreens.
But these aren't even, are you referring to even the package stores, or these are also like, I mean, we have to look at ourselves in the mirror here, right? We're doing all this work, we're making so much progress, but, I mean, imagine being the guys that built Espanola Way, which is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. I was there the third weekend in March, and it was packed with families. And then right across the street, they open up basically a new equivalent of Fat Tuesdays. Right, where they're selling slushy alcohol drinks out of a smoothie machine. It's disgusting, disgusting. Taco Bell, right? Taco Bell just opened up on Washington Avenue right there. And what is their main feature? They're selling takeaway slushy tequila drinks. Right? That's also what you're talking about, right? Yeah, that's why I did the,
Would the packaged liquor store that's technically on Lincoln Road, is that the Five Below?
No, the packaged liquor store, there's a packaged liquor store that's just south of Lincoln Road on the west side of Collins. Another one just north of Lincoln Road on the west side. Yeah, that's the third one. That's the Walgreens liquor store. So within that area, those are all non-conforming in terms of current distance separation requirements. So basically, no new package stores could open up. But this referral was about looking at ways to incentivize the discontinuance of those existing package stores. And so some of the things that we suggested was perhaps tying future increases in development intensity along Lincoln Road to the removal of those stores if those stores happen to exist within a property or a building where some type of zoning incentive is approved by the commission. Another thing would be to perhaps look at other incentives such as reductions or waivers of impact fees for future development of the property if they are willing to forego a packaged liquor store, and even reduced off-street parking requirements if they were willing to forego that.
Okay, I mean, that seems fine.
Do any of those possibilities exist for the Ritz project that's under
Sure.
progress?
You
Or are we too
could,
late?
you could include that within the larger area. For the Ritz property specifically, we're probably too late because they've already gotten all their development approvals.
I hope capitalism takes care of itself, where they're trying to sell $20 million condos, and it's not prudent to do so with packaged liquor store beneath their site.
Okay.
Not the brightest guy in the book, but I know how that works.
So how many there's three?
I believe there's three.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are they the owners?
One of them, no, I don't think so. I think they're all tenants.
So even if the owners wanted to take advantage of it, but if they're in a lease, what,
That could present an issue, even if an owner wanted to take an advantage of an incentive, if the lease has tied their hands, that might complicate it.
Commissioner Bott, maybe I'm just thinking outside of the box as far as like an increased incentives. Like you said, if it's leased and they have maybe a 10-year lease and the owner can't do anything about it because financially they can't buy them out. And I'm just shooting from the hip here, but you do have like the Ritz-Carlton who has a vested interest in having the immediate area become better. Maybe give an incentive for someone to buy out that property and maybe transfer that sort of right to something else. I don't know, this is your item. I'm just thinking outside the box. I'm hoping it works. But I'm thinking along the lines of have someone with the capital to actually buy out the whole lease and that store and get something of benefit to another project where, let's say the Ritz wants to buy them out, but let's give them an incentive to not necessarily build something, but
Would your staff be willing to take a look at what that could look like? Some ideas?
Yeah, we can explore some ideas like that. It would be something that you don't necessarily need to modify the code for. I mean, if one private property owner wanted to enter into an agreement with another private property owner to buy a certain tenant out for whatever reason, that would be a private
Right, but
transaction.
I think the part that might need to be codified, or maybe it doesn't, maybe it's just, a meeting with economic development, but, if you, large, well-funded buyer wants to buy out this lease and repurpose this business for something more beneficial, then in addition to getting a more beneficial business use close to your property, you would also get X. And what does X look like? So, and it may not need to go into our code, but, let's see what other cities are doing about this, how to incentivize better retail operations, and maybe it's, a rebate on a BTR for a year, or I don't know what is legal or whatever it is, but can we look into that?
or maybe even like seating capacity for certain restaurants if they want to build a restaurant and they have certain constraints. There's a whole menu of options that you can think. But again, this is your item. I'm just saying, I love the idea of just trying to get rid of these packaged liquor stores because they're gross. But let's do our best to see if we can make it happen. And you have a large capital investor who happen to be in the area who might take note of this. And Commissioner, maybe you want to reach out to the Brits and say, hey, I'm willing to give you an opportunity here to really improve the neighborhood. How can we work together?
Do you want to bring this back in a couple of months with, after we've had a chance to flesh out some ideas with the city attorney and with economic development?
Yeah, I'd like to, maybe even before it comes back, have a sense of what can be done.
We can meet with you separately.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, maybe Stephen and I make some phone calls or have some meetings with,
Okay.
you know.
Why don't we start with a meeting? I can organize a meeting with Stephen and Nick in the next couple of weeks, and then we can plan something. And then, in the meantime, we'll just continue this to a future date
Yep.
for updates.
Yep.
Great. Okay, you want to make a motion to it? I don't know if we formally moved it, or it's just coming
Yep.
back. Okay.
Continue to a future
The
date.
last item, let's do number 7.
Okay, item number 7 is,
Actually, let's do number 1.
okay.
Just kidding. That's April Fool's.
Oh my God, David, you're so funny.
I am.
April Fools.
So are we doing 1 or 7?
7. Okay.
Item number 7 is discussion on possible inclusion of a charter or private school within the 72nd Street Community Complex project.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, David Gomez, Director.
Yeah, and I just wanted to let me bring it up. I one of the residents, actually Andres Session, brought this to my attention, and wanted to explore the idea of, for this 72nd Street complex, to maybe have a small school there at the complex. And I generally like the idea, and because, you know, one of our biggest pain points I think in South Florida in general is just the lack of schools. And I wanted to see what staff can come up with to possibly having more schools. I mean, I know we have a school that's expanding south of Fifth, but you know they're hitting a roadblock, unfortunately, with some of our processes, and it's a real shame. And I would like to see what we could do to bring in more schools into the area. And if we have an opportunity to do that at the 72nd Street complex, that's worth exploring.
So
And if I could piggyback, I am 1,000% conceptually supportive of this. Schools are our Achilles heel. We're presented with this generational opportunity of new businesses moving into South Florida, especially Miami Beach. But we have residents that are leaving the city because of lack of schools, right? You get to a certain age, you move to it's a tale as old as time. You move to Coconut Grove, you move away. I don't want that anymore. So whether it's here or other places, we provided some general land development regulation incentives for this, but it was very open-ended. We need to really put on our thinking caps and have this as one of our highest priorities about where we can put in schools, whether it be public, private, charter. It's just the more supply that we have, the better.
So the biggest challenge for this project is that the consideration of adding a school at this point in the program throws a major delay into the project itself. There are some very simple questions that need to be answered first. How big a school? What type of space do they need? Do they need access to outdoor space? What is the program of the school itself? How would the city enter into that agreement? What type of agreement is it? All of those items require commission action at multiple levels. So that time to figure out who would be involved or who would take the space and what their requirements would be individually is something that would push the completion of the 72nd Street project considerably. And that's the main reason why the administration is not supportive of doing it at this time. There's always ways to figure out how to accommodate some space in the future. And we're happy to do that. We're just asking to finish the project so that we can move on from there.
I get that this has been planned, so maybe I'm just venting here. I'm not giving direction to change. But I'm just like, where are our priorities? We're gonna have more competition size or near competition size swimming pools in the area for swimming teams than actually schools, right? That's crazy. This swimming pool on the roof, and again, this is me just venting. I'm not throwing a change order in because at one point I wanted to, because I just think it's a silly bang for the buck. Then you had people come in, say they were planning this for years and years. I said, who am I to come into the last minute and change? But this swimming pool is going to cost so much money, take up so much space for such a small, specialized group of individuals, right? Where we could essentially spread that wealth, and I say wealth in terms of resources, spread that around to provide educational opportunities. It's frustrating.
Look, I mean, just because the administration's not approving this, I mean, it doesn't mean that we have to go along with what they say. I mean, at least two commissioners up here, three, value education, and I want to explore this a little further. I mean, like Commissioner Magazine said, we're spending. How much is the pool component of this costing?
I don't have those numbers with me. It's not a cheap component.
Yeah,
obviously.
I mean, the fact that how much is the whole project?
The construction budget is between 70 and 80 million.
$80 million, and a lot of that is because we're putting a pool, above ground, Olympic-sized pool. I mean, it is almost.
What do you think, Mr. Mayor?
It is almost comical.
Before you leave.
Yeah.
You're not off the hook. You're not out of the
Neeson.
hot seat. Yeah,
Yeah, sure, why not?
Just quiet and,
should have left the other way. I wouldn't have seen.
I know, but you know I'm not shy about voicing my opinion of things in my city. And I actually happen to agree with you. It seems that that's a very, don't kill me for this, but it seems that's a very large project, very expensive project. You have a very nice pool at Normandy, on Normandy Isle as well. You have a really nice pool at the youth center and a nice one at Flamingo Park. It does seem very expensive, you know? And I have a few other issues I'd be happy to address as well when you're ready. But
What it's Festivus, Mr. Mayor.
Festivus.
It's just air your grievances.
this is like free time to, you know, I also have to think you have to take a good look at what you're going to do about the Byron and Carlisle and the expense of that and what's going to result from that.
And you know, you bring up a good point, the Byron Carlisle, the swimming pool.
I'm sorry.
All of this, hold on.
No, I'm sorry.
Can I-
The Byron Carlisle has not been noticed. We're not
Well, no,
revisiting.
I'm just, Commissioner, please.
We're not
let me
revisiting this.
finish. Let me finish.
It's coming onto the commission meeting
What-
agenda
What I was
next
going to say
April.
is that what I was going to say is that we are expanding programs for children in the Byron Carlisle at the pool, and we're making more parks, but we're not incentivizing more schools, right? You know, so we're doing all of this stuff for children, but at the same time, we're not incentivizing more children to be raised here because of our lack of schools. And I'm fully supportive of the Byron Carlisle. I don't know where that came
Yeah,
from, but
what's the next hornet's nest?
You were just giving me.
You want to talk
look,
about the Bay Link?
I'm just,
No,
You're just giving me
think
free
it comes
shots.
from the fact that you still have an item trying to kill the Byron Carlisle on the agenda for April.
okay,
That's where it
Commissioner,
comes from.
There's no item to kill anything. There's
But
discussions.
Commissioner, that was my, and you're right, it's not on the agenda, it shouldn't be discussed, but that was my own, it's, you know, it's almost 5 o'clock. in the
baited
af-
him into it.
It's almost 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's almost, you know, almost Passover, and I just felt like letting it all out.
Want to get into the Bay Link? Who knows?
I'm ready.
I think what we're getting at is we're doing all of these programs for children, yet we're not really incentivizing more children to want to be here in Miami Beach to begin with. You know, and that all starts with schools, right? We can have all the programs in the world for children, but you know, if there's no schools here, then these programs are, you know, they're going to, other kids from other cities are going to come here to take advantage of it. And I don't want that. I want there to be a healthy, you know, influx, and I want families to come here, raise children here, and have generations of Miami Beachians for years to come. So, look, I stated this on the record. I have reservations about an Olympic-sized swimming pool at the 72nd Street Garage. Would I rather have a school there? Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. Maybe we need to discuss this at the commission meeting, because we have an opportunity now to actually have possibly another school in Miami Beach. And I think that's a golden opportunity. So I don't know, Commissioner Magazine, I know you're very passionate
Tom,
about this.
Let me ask you, if I was a charter school or private school operator, and it doesn't have to be restricted to city land, and I'm asking you questions I've actually been personally asked, right? You know what, we would love to bring XYZ school in to Miami Beach. Where's the right location for it? I'll tell you where I've thought. I thought the Story nightclub site could be good. The Miami Beach Women's Club and that kind of adjoining hotel that's right there. This could be a good opportunity, but you're the urban planner. Where do you think would be good opportunities, whether they be public or private?
Most of our zoning districts allow schools in some form.
But forget that, right? We could change that zoning.
But in terms of my understanding and talking to people who have built these is that they're looking for space. They're looking for either the ability to build new buildings as well as have space. And having these types of schools in urban settings actually can be a good thing. So I think the sky's the limit in terms of the availability of a building with adjacent space.
but where would you direct somebody? They said, you know what, I'm this private school operator from London, New York, yeah, and we want to provide this great educational opportunity, whether it be the charter school route, private school route. Tom, Mr. Urban Planning Director, directs me to focus here.
And when that question's been posed to us in the past, what I've told people is a lot really depends upon how much money they want to spend, what their budget is. But if you're just looking for the availability of appropriate sized buildings, our commercial districts are very good places to look. Up in North Beach, along Collins Avenue, there's a host of large properties with buildings that have a lot of space in them. The area between 65th and 69th, for instance, the area north of 71st Street, along 71st Street, along Normandy, and that's just North Beach. And then if you get down to Mid Beach, South Beach, Alton Road, 5th Street, there's a lot of areas that have that available type of building. It really comes down to what somebody is willing to pay and how much somebody is offering the property for, at least in terms of a lease or in terms of a purchase.
Right, but we wouldn't have an opportunity like this where you'd have that much space where the government can say, hey, look, you know, here's an opportunity to have a school. I mean, I can't think of a place that's on government land to do that of that size.
No, I can't think of one either.
And we're not talking in place of the recreation
Right.
facility, right? We're talking
Incorporated into it. And by the way, you know, it wouldn't be like an added cost. I mean, we would want to explore some sort of partnership with a possible school. Commissioner Bott.
David, how much have we put into this project already?
I don't have that number off the top of my
Ballpark.
head.
5 million?
It's several million,
Okay, and then it's about $70 to $80 million to build it?
yes.
Okay, and what are the legalities of city using taxpayer money to pay for a private school or a charter school? It's one thing if we were building a public school, but that's not what this would be. You're proposing a private school or a charter school
Don't we
potentially.
lease city land everywhere?
We're not talking about leasing,
Who's that?
from what I'm taking away, we want to reimagine the design of what has already been planned. And I was a long time opponent of putting a pool on a roof, and I was convinced that it was okay because we were going to get so much business from these, professional level swim meets that it was going to be worthwhile. So I'm open to the idea of reimagining things, but I'm not open to the idea of the city spending, let's say, $35 million to subsidize the purchase and build out of a school. I'm very happy to find space for a school to come in. I mean, the more schools, the merrier. I moved here because the schools were great. The more schools, the merrier. But I am not okay with spending GO bond money, taxpayer money to subsidize a private enterprise. If they want to come in and they want to say, hey, we will pay you to reimagine 50% of the structure for the school that we want to bring here, and we will split the cost of building the facility. Let's have that conversation. But I'm not okay with.
Theoretically, one, what I was thinking of was, and again, this is just on the fly, right? You lease it to the school, but how's that different than subsidizing an arts organization?
So you're not leasing it to the school because you can't lease something that isn't built to a school specification. It has to be designed for a school. Right now, we're building a community sports complex.
That's not true. You know, the Setner Academy they purchased a building, and that building wasn't designed for a school. It was actually designed, I think, for like a club, or I believe. But I'm not. And just to be clear, I'm not saying we need to redesign the whole thing. I'm saying a space in the already designed aspect. I mean, it's more of like interior than exterior of what I'm discussing. And I'm not also saying we would subsidize it at all. I'm saying let's explore the possibility of a top-ranked school coming and saying, hey, we want to invest with you, City of Miami Beach, to open up a flagship school in North Beach. And we want to be partners in it. I'm not saying we're going to spend $35 million to redesign this to accommodate.
If we have this, these corridors of underutilized in building inventory that could use a makeover and a repurposing of usage up in North Beach, which we do, why would we not have that same exact conversation with private and charter schools and say, you can have front row seating, you can have the pick of the litter at these great spots throughout North Beach, and let us work with you to.
That's private, isn't that? Are you talking about private land?
It's underutilized private land, yes.
Right. I mean, right. If that was the case, then there'd be a bunch of schools open up, right? But there's not. The lowest hanging fruit for some of these property owners isn't to build schools; it's to build ultra luxury condos, and especially with Live Local, it's even lower hanging fruit. And so, look, again, I'm not saying we need to completely change the design. I'm saying incorporate in there instead of, I don't know what were some of the things that we're going to have in there, but maybe we dedicate, half of one of these floors to a school. Maybe it's just a school for small children. I think that's worth. I think if we have that opportunity, as a city, let's do that. Look, we like Commissioner Magazine said, we give all sorts of opportunities for arts and culture, right? And a host of nonprofits. But
Right, we have Live Nation operating the Fillmore. I don't understand why we wouldn't use similar opportunities for education. We're going to have a private entity operating the Byron Caro, right? We're going to have a private entity. Do we own the Colony Theater?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, of course,
And
right.
Commissioner Bott, I mean, Commissioner Magazine brings up a good point. We're going to literally redevelop and spend up to $40 million redeveloping the Byron Carlisle for an arts
And the
organization.
Fillmore. For Live
Yeah.
Nation, it's a publicly traded company. They have a market cap of billions of dollars.
Yeah, and so, I don't see the issue with incentivizing or putting on public land a partnership with a real flagship school to, really attract, more families to Miami Beach. Commissioner Bott? Okay, well, look, I think this is good discussion. I think we should bring this to the commission and really hear it out because, look, and I'm not saying we need to get rid of the pool for those of you watching. I'm saying let's bring it in. I think when we first got elected and we realized, Commissioner Bott, that there was only going to be like an added 50 spaces extra, right? We said, well, why don't we just build another floor and we'll get another 100 because, parking is in high demand. Maybe we add another floor. I don't know. We did that for parking. If we can do that for parking, one floor, maybe we could do that for a school, which would be paid by the school.
The school, yeah. And we saw it at FERC this morning. Somebody's going to make a proposal to come and build an office project on an existing rooftop, right? So if it's at the onset, why couldn't we build a school on the rooftop of this, right? And again, it will be capitalized by our money, but then leased out. I'm not talking about giving this away, right? Just like how we own the anchor shops and we lease that to a private restaurant operator. We would lease this to a school.
Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, just for consideration?
Yeah. I'll second.
Want to conclude the item and move it to the full commission for discussion?
Sure.
Okay.
I think that's it for the day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.